Tae-young sat in the bedroom of his, holding the page in his fist, which was now wrinkled and ruined from the sweating of his palms and the force from which he was holding it. The written sentences could fade too, but Tae-young knew he didn't had to. Worrying about remembering what was written there or not, cause the address which Jungkook had given him was of the apartment of Tae-young, where they met, away from the eyes of the world and away from everything that could separate them from each other. He had called him there, at Tae-young's old apartment, back to the place where it all started and 5 years back where it all ended one night. He had called him there, to the place where they spent endless hours making love, kissing each other in their own constructed dreamy bubble, where they slipped off from the rules and the principles which the world had set on them, that step-brother, regardless of being alpha and omega, weren't allowed to be in an intimate relation like that. The more he sat there on the bed, the more his thoughts ate him up, the more it became difficult for him to reach the conclusion if he was supposed to go or not. What was even the point of going and meeting him? What? To have him tell him that his dreams were important. He wanted to become someone better for him, which Tae-young could see and be proud of. Just that, or just hear him beg, hear him say how sorry he was and all that old tale. What was even the point of letting Jungkook in their lives again? What? They had led their lives alone. Taejeon grew up without a second parent. Tae-young raised him alone with the help of him in working 2 jobs at a time, running around and always making sure that Taejeon always got everything he asked for and wanted, and whenever he ended up losing the track of one thing, him and his mother stood at the other end to help him. Tae-young wiped off his tears and then ripped off the paper, throwing off the pages all across the room in rage that was slowly building in his blood in an uncontrollable manner. Carding fingers through his damp hair shakily, he shook his head forcefully, and then opening the drawer of his nightstand, he brought out the sleeping pills. It was something that he got used to after Jungkook left during the pregnancy. He held himself back from taking the pills forcefully, but after the delivery, even when doctors told him to avoid it, he couldn't bring it in himself to do it. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him so much, Tae-young muttered to himself as he took out 2 pills and then swallowed them, taking the assistance of water. Since the time Jungkook left him there alone, and after reaching the place he dreamt of growing up, he ghosted him like Tae-young never existed, and just as Jungkook slowly and steadily slipped away from his life, the sleep, peace and serenity also slowly and steadily slipped from his hand. Those things never found their way to Tae-young, ever. Tae-young didn't remember what happened after he took the pills and slept. All he remembered doing in the middle is calling him in and asking him to pick Taejeon up, cause he was too tired himself to do it. He didn't even do anything. He didn't even go to his jobs. But he was emotionally exhausted. That led to him being physically exhausted. Like that, his vision was blurry when he opened his eyes and looked around. His head violently shook and there was no sound to be heard from their small apartment, signaling that it was night time. Getting up from the bed, he took off the blanket and seeing the time on the clock placed over his nightstand, he was able to conclude that it was past midnight. Instantly, he sat up and ran out of his room towards the direction of Taejeon's, only to find himself getting frozen on the spot when he saw Jungkook sitting at the edge of the bed of Taejeon, his cheeks wet from the tears. His both hands were curled in a fist as he sat there, watching Taejeon with tears filling each and every corner of his beautiful doe eyes. Taeyoung wanted to run towards him and throw him out of the room, punch him and shout at him, for he had no reason to be here and sit with Taejeon, let alone stare him with those longing gaze. But at the same time, seeing the longing that shone in the eyes of Jungkook, Taeyoung just stood there, stuck, not having it in him to move forward and move back and leave. He just stood there watching Jungkook like it was the most beautiful yet painful sight to his eyes, the one that gives comfort also, the one that deprives one of peace and comfort. Standing there for a long time, Taeyoung sighed, and then walking inside the room he swallowed, before landing his hand over Jungkook's shoulder, making him let out a gasp as soon as Taeyoung's hand made contact with his flesh, which further explained that he was so immersed in the sight of his son that he was unable to feel eyes on him, Taeyoung's eyes on him. Seeing Taeyoung standing there, he shook his head, crying, looking a damn miserable wreck. Taeyoung's heart broke at the sight of Jungkook, crying so intensely that his eyes were puffed, his nose was half red and his lips quivered, along with the slight tremble of his chin. It was a sight that seemed to pain Taeyoung up to the in-depth cause of his being, cause he had known Jungkook for almost all his life. He knew how much of a strong person he was, and he had never seen him cry that much in the time they were dating. It was the first time he was seeing him crying like that he could feel the sobs that were coiling around the throat of his. Jungkook's tears-filled eyes looked up to his as thick hot tears streamed down his face, and something got transferred from one soul to the other as Taeyoung walked closer, and before he could stop himself his arms were wrapping around Jungkook's head, and as if Jungkook had been waiting for Taeyoung to make that move, he instantly wrapped his arms around Taeyoung's waist, pulling him down until he sat over his lap, straddling him. His face buried itself in Taeyoung's neck, and as much as Taeyoung hated himself to do it, he ended up wrapping his arms around Jungkook's neck and legs around his waist. His one hand found its way in Jungkook's hair, and his fingers naturally started combing through his hair, massaging his scalp along with his head resting over Jungkook's head. Stop crying. He will wake up, Taeyoung whispered slowly, making himself at home over Jungkook's lap, with his fingers combing through his hair and his nose buried in his hair, smelling the scent of his hair, the one that was once the most needed thing of his existence, but well, the needed thing of his existence 5 years back, not now. Jungkook's body shook from the sobs he muffled against Taeyoung's neck. The tears that left his eyes rolled down his skin and then got soaked over Taeyoung's shirt. Jungkook didn't speak, only cried, silently muffling his sobs and the screams that were resting in his chest against Taeyoung's flesh, and, well, Taeyoung knew Jungkook had no place in his and Taejeon's life, so it was better for Jungkook to let it all out in here and pour his pain out on Taeyoung's soul and his shirt, so Taeyoung wouldn't worry about his pain. So he closed his and hugging Jungkook close, he just let him cry as much as he desired to in his warm embrace.